this day, one of the greatest mysteries in the history of this earth is if King Richard III really did kill his nephews, the princes, in the Tower. But before you make a conclusion that it was Richard III, stop and ask yourself this question. If you were in Richard's place, would you really kill your nephews? If no, then you should start to see my point. If yes, you should start to see a doctor. Now, before we put all the blame on Richard, let's start thinking about someone else who might be a suspect. I suspect that Henry Tudor might be to blame for the killing of the two boys. For those that don't know, here is the story of the princes in the Tower. At the time in England, there was a massive civil war going on called the War of the Roses. So it was between the two houses of the royals. It was between Lancaster and York. So the two houses were squabbling over who was meant to be in charge of England, and it was at the end of this war that the Princes of the Tower story starts. The Lancastrian king Henry VI was killed, meaning that his cousins from York took over, starting with Edward IV. Now, after Edward IV took over in the Wars of the Roses, something really unexpected happened. Edward IV unexpectedly died. Now, luckily Edward IV had a son, Edward V, who then took the throne, and he was only 12 at the time. So Edward IV's brother, Edward V's uncle Richard, promised to take care of him as Lord Protector. But days before the young King Edward V's coronation, something really interesting happened. Richard decided they would make sure that he could try and be king by claiming that Edward V and his brother were illegitimate. So this meant that instead of Edward V getting his coronation, Richard became Richard III of England, and then after this, the two boys mysteriously vanished into the Tower of London, where they were not seen again. Now, a lot of people seem to believe that Richard III murdered the boys, but a certain Henry Tudor decided that he wanted the throne and to replace Richard III as ruler, so he beat Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth and killed him. Henry Tudor then had himself crowned King Henry VII, and his reign was quite notorious for fining everybody. Now, another thing that you have to remember is that a lot of the stuff that you hear about Richard III was written by this man, William Shakespeare. But you may be thinking, why would Shakespeare just try to make Richard out as the bad guy? Well, it's really because he was out to please King Henry VII's granddaughter, Elizabeth I, a Tudor queen. And making out that Richard was the bad guy proves that he supports Henry VII, which shows Elizabeth I that he supports her. Now, another man that made up a lot of stuff about Richard III was actually Thomas More, and another thing about Thomas More is, who was he out to please? Why, none other than Henry VII's son, Henry VIII. So, Henry VIII was the son of Henry VII, so by proving that his dad had a reason to defeat a monster to come to the throne, then it shows support for him. But you may be wondering about Henry VII. What would he have to gain out of murdering the princes? Well, it's actually rather simple. So, this is what I was thinking. I was thinking it's because he's Lancaster, but the two boys, the princes in the Tower, were York. So, the War of the Roses thing kicked in and he would have killed them. So, sometime during Henry VII's reign, a man called Perkin Warbeck came out and said that he was Richard of Shrewsbury, the younger of the princes in the Tower. So he actually led a rebellion against Henry VII, but was captured by Henry VII's army and executed by beheading. So another thing is, any pretenders to the throne would have been eliminated by Henry VII. He didn't want anyone. Now, another thing worth talking about is the fact that back then the Tower of London was not actually a prison, but instead luxury royal housing. You see, Buckingham Palace was only designed during the reign of George IV. Well, it was built during his reign, but before that, the Tower of London was normally used as a palace for the royals to live in, and back then, in this time, it was no different. Another thing is that during the Henry VII's reign, a man was tortured until he confessed to murdering the princes in the Tower, but this was a forced confession, and he said that he done it because Richard told him to, but this is only because he was being tortured, because if he didn't confess, they would have likely have killed him. So, needless to say, Henry VII didn't really like Richard III because he killed him. Another thing is that he didn't even give him a respectful funeral or anything. He just chucked him in a grave that was too small for him and then just left him there. Richard's bones were discovered underneath a car park in Leicester, and then the body was taken to the University of Leicester, where it was tested and tested and tested until eventually results came back positive to prove that this really was King Richard III. Richard III was reburied, and he was given a funeral this time, where the Queen actually sent someone to attend for her as she was too busy to attend on herself, but she did send someone to Richard's funeral, second funeral, and then that was that. So, I believe that the answer to this question, did Richard III kill the princes in the Tower, is no. I think he's innocent of it. I think it was actually Henry VII who done it, because he would have had a lot more to gain out of it, because Richard already claimed the boys were illegitimate, so what was the point in him just killing them just for the sake of it? No, there's no chance that he would have done that. That would be pointless. So, my best guess is that it was Henry VII that killed the princes in the Tower, not Richard III as it had been previously believed. But in a weird twist of fate, Henry VII actually married the princes in the Tower's sister, Elizabeth of York. But I honestly believe that the history books have got it wrong. So, I hope you all enjoyed watching the very first episode of The Investigators. You may have thought that I forgot about this series, but no, I was just working on it the whole way. But I hope you learned something from this video, and if you did, give it a like, leave a comment and share it with your friends. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Goodbye.